Is there any disclaimers that we should be making? I mean, I feel like I've disclaimed it enough that I'm generalizing, right? Like I'm not attacking men. I'm saying I'm speaking from a woman's perspective who's been a woman my whole life.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, when I hear you talking about these things, there's a part of my brain going like, "Ooh, you're gonna get it from the guys," but that's part of the problem, because
Yeah.
if you really listen to what you're saying, it's not an attack. It's like a shared awareness, and I think if guys can kind of just put that triggered response to the side and just listen,
Yeah.
then maybe you'll actually hear what's being said. And also, if when they're listening to you talking about these things, they see that you're reacting in like aggressive, emotional, it's justified, because this stuff is real. It's not like you're not attacking men. You're coming from a place of defense.
Exactly.
You know, you're coming from a place of like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So I think men need to kind of just put your ego to the side a bit, allow that, and really hear what the message is. Anyone that's listening or watching, I just want you to know that 80% of you are not actually subscribed, which is fine. I appreciate that you might just be testing the waters. But if you watch this and you think, hey, I quite like these two, I'd like to see more of their content, just subscribe, and then you've got a bigger chance of revisiting and seeing more stuff. So welcome back to another episode of Brigi and Stuff.
Hello.
I'm Hayward.
I'm Brigi.
And today, what are we talking about?
Well, a conversation came up with this new viral moment of the certain comedian. It's making rounds on the internet.
What's his name?
His name is Matt Rife, I think. And he's basically, there's just been some videos circulating of him and his new comedy special, and there's been a lot of conversation about him on the internet, because he seems to have turned a little bit misogynistic. I don't know if it turned or if he was always like that, but he went from like having a mostly female audience to now going with the boys, making one for the boys. And it's just did a kind of a 180 on his content, and people are a little bit confused as to why.
I haven't watched a lot of his content, but I have watched his older stuff where he had small audiences and he was always like kind of playful with the women, because he has a lot of like female fans, because he's a good looking bloke and he's got a charm about him, and he knows, and he plays into that. But you always see him like in the audiences playing that kind of role, but it never seemed malicious or nasty or like out of, like it was never too off to the side.
I don't really remember his earlier content that much. I do remember he popped up on my social media a few times, and I remember seeing him and, you know, hearing his jokes or whatever, and I never really thought much of it. I was always like, I don't think his comedy is for me necessarily, but I never thought it was bad or anything. There's just one of those that kept popping up, and I understood. I was like, yeah, sure, like everybody loves him because blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But then I saw the first video I saw of him where I thought, I'm not sure how I feel about this, is the one that I think we're going to show, or we're going to listen to.
Yes.
Should I look for it now?
Yeah, show me.
Okay. So let's watch this clip and then we'll discuss.
This is like a controversial clip.
I don't think it started off as controversial at first until some people started to question it. Because for a lot of people, this is the interesting part, right? I'm interested to see, upon watching it, how people react. Because some people were like, sure, okay, fair enough. What's the problem? And some people were like,
that's not right, sort of thing.
Something's weird.
Actually going through a breakup right now with a girl that I was like, fuck, this might be it.
Yeah, you're still young.
I know, but like, dude, everything was great until it wasn't. Like every single thing about her, I was like, fuck this. Like this could be my wife.
Well, then what was the thing that?
Man, I messed up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then her reaction to that mess up made it 1,000 times worse.
So that was the video.
So let me get it straight. He thinks he's found someone that's like the perfect woman. He messes up a little bit. And then because of her reaction, it's ruined.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is that she should have allowed the mess up and that it's her fault.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so, and like, obviously this is a little bit out of context. I didn't listen to the entire video, but regardless of that, that was the first time when most people were like, you know, they would listen to it and be like, sure, fair enough, like whatever, that's why you broke up. But some people, especially women, picked up immediately that, well, not just women, people in general, who thought, well, you don't elaborate on the mess up unless he does later in the episode. But in that moment, it's like, I messed up a little, but it was her reaction is what made me break up with her.
Yeah, he's deflecting from the original problem, right?
And that's when people are a little bit like, which is not a massive thing, but already then people were like, okay, a bit out of left field, like a bit strange.
Yeah, he's not being fully transparent, is he?
He's not being fully transparent. And this idea of like, I mess up, but you shouldn't react like that when I mess up. It's like,
yeah,
that doesn't,
it's a bit,
that doesn't seem.
It's a double standard, isn't it?
It is. And, you know, and then this girl was the perfect girl for you, but because of her reaction to your mistake, you are now ready to throw it all away. So was she the perfect girl? And like, how much did you value this person?
So was this already like showing signs that he's maybe a little bit
So this was just something
deluded?
Yeah, it was just, you know, something where people would be like, okay, interesting. You know, when your ears kind of perk up and you go, weird, but sure, like everybody's allowed like a little, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But then he basically did his new comedy special.
The Netflix one.
The Netflix one. And that was the one where people were like, okay, this isn't right. It doesn't sit right with a lot of people. And basically what happened was he started his special. Well, we watched some of it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because it was like such controversy, and I thought, okay, let's
Yeah, what's it about?
Try it just to see. And so he starts off with a domestic violence joke, which isn't even funny.
No, it's not.
It's funny in a.
It's not even clever funny.
In a like your dad is telling this joke in the 80s. You know what I mean? It's like it's like funny like that maybe to like a 60-year-old, where it's like, oh, you know, that like I hate my wife kind of humor, where it's like, oh, she had a black eye because oh she should get back in the kitchen. It's that kind of humor, which I'm sure some people find funny, but like we're in 2023 and we can leave that humor behind.
Yeah.
But regardless, that was he started off with. And so already people were like, okay, what happened? Where did you go from being for the girls to this? And then he defends it with, well, this special was more for the guys, it was for the boys. And then we continued watching it and we didn't even get to finish it because it was so bad.
It was really bad.
And it was bad on many levels. First of all, it was bad because the entire content, because then he started going into these type of jokes continued. It's as if he got a book on like how do people make fun of women or what do women like and then men can make fun of or people can make fun of. I'm not arguing that there is no way where you can make fun of women. You can make fun of women and it can be funny, just like how women can make fun of men and anybody can make fun of anybody, and it can be really funny and really clever. And sometimes
it can be non-aggressive.
Exactly. And sometimes it's like a little bit like ooh whatever, but it's still funny, at least it's clever or whatever. But this was like, not only was it just plain like, oh, like women does this, but because it's a woman it's stupid kind of funny. It was unfunny. His joke is like, you know, oh, women think the planets are gonna tell you this because, you know, making fun of horoscopes, and then he goes, no it doesn't. That's the joke.
It was weird watching it because he's like because usually the bits of the comedy that I've seen him do, it comes like quite naturally to him, but this seemed like staged. It seemed like it was detached from what he was before. Yeah. And so I wonder really why he has done it. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if later on we find out that he'd been kind of pressured into doing it. I kind of hope for him he was.
Yeah.
The alternative is that that's actually what he's about. And that's what he prefers to do. And going back to his statement about like, this is one for the guys, that's insulting to a lot of guys. Because that's saying that all guys are going to find like battering women jokes funny.
Exactly.
And it's like a lot of guys have moved on from that stuff.
Exactly.
You know, like I might have laughed at sexist, aggressive, racist types of jokes when I was younger, growing up into it, not knowing any better.
Yeah.
But then once I knew better, suddenly, like once you really know about it, like the funniness kind of slowly dissolves.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? When you realize why.
Yeah, when you realize it's at somebody's expense.
So for guys that are like potentially listening who like a sexist joke where it's like, oh, what do you tell a woman with one or with two black eyes? Nothing. She's already been told twice. That kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Their argument might be, oh, it's just a bit of banter. It's just a bit of light humor. It doesn't hurt anybody. There's nothing wrong about it. Why is it a problem?
It's a problem because it does hurt people. It doesn't hurt anybody and it's just a joke stops being true, where men who say those jokes then go out and treat women like that. And when people say, oh, but not everybody does and not all men and blah, 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 and I wouldn't do that. I can make a joke like that and I wouldn't hit a woman. And it's like, okay, but you are allowing these jokes amongst men, and there are men who do hit women. And so while there are a few men, a lot of men, but let's say a few men, those bad apples or whatever people like to call it, who are actually really toxic and abusive and aggressive and do all kinds of horrible things, those men exist because other men allow them to.
So by kind of being part of the humor, are we enabling people or men that are being really aggressive to women?
Yes.
And so are we saying that it's men's responsibility to check other men when they're doing these kind of jokes?
Yes.
For all of society?
Yes. Because
even if it is just a few bad apples.
Yeah. Because
which is probably a lot more.
The thing is, it's like the reason why it's not just a few bad apples and it is pretty much all men is because if you are not against the problem, then you are part of the problem in this case. If you are in a group full of men and men are making sexist jokes and they're saying horrible things, potentially harassing someone because that's just a casual thing as well, and there are nobody that steps in and says, hey, this is not okay,
yeah,
then you're part of the problem.
You know, is it not enough that women are telling men about this stuff?
No, because men don't listen to women, first of all. And
well, open that up. What do you mean?
Because of the power structure, men respect and believe other men, and men try to impress other men a lot of the times. That is often the case, right? Because men who are the one that are in power. For men, it's important to get to a powerful position and to be supported by other men, more so than it is by other women.
So you think men value they value more what other men have to say rather than women?
Yeah, they do.
And respect other men more than they respect
And when
them.
I say these things, I'm obviously massively generalizing. And while I understand that in an individual human level, everybody's very different and has very different views and can be in millions and billions of different ways, I can understand that and I can recognize that. But you can't ignore systems that are in place. And so while as much as a lot of people would like to say, well, I would never do that, I don't think that way, this doesn't apply to me, I would never do this, I do the right thing, blah, blah, blah. That's great. And on an individual level, that works. And everybody has an individual responsibility to be a decent human being. However, there are systems in place in the world that are to advantage of some people and disadvantage of others. That's just what it is. You cannot deny it. To me, there is no argument against it. I can't imagine an argument that would work because all you have to do is look at the world and who's in power in most places and what's the percentage of men and women and where the world is right now. And so you can't tell me that that's not a problem.
Yeah.
And while I understand that it's difficult for some people to see somebody else's struggle if you haven't gone through it yourself. You sometimes just have to listen.
So yeah, what would you say to blokes that say, you know, well, you know, I had it really hard, I didn't have anything given to me on a silver spoon, like I wasn't given any of these benefits that you say that men have over women, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So for those people, does it come back to the point, like, yeah, everybody has their individual experience, but on a whole,
yeah,
you know, there's
yeah, and on the whole, if you are, you know, if you have a dark street at midnight,
yeah,
and you have two people walking down that street,
yeah,
do you think that a man who didn't have any of these privileges and had a really difficult whatever in life is walking down on one side, and a woman, any woman, is walking down on the other side, who's going to be scared of who and why?
generally, yeah, definitely, but even more so, like, not just a dark street, just a date.
Well,
yeah,
street. Yeah, I'm just saying an extreme example,
because there's many dark streets I've walked down where I've shat my pants.
Yeah, of course, and that's but
again, I'm scared because of other men.
I was just about to say, it's because of other men. It's not, and obviously there's an example for everything. So if somebody brings up like, oh yeah, but you heard of this one incident where there was a group of evil women who killed this man, I'm sure it happened, but that's not the majority of the time, which is the majority of the time is what happens. And so to that I say, I understand that you have had struggles. Everybody has struggles in life, but when it comes down to it, women generally, or femme presenting people, are scared of men. That's what they're scared of. I don't care about your struggles. If you're walking next to me on a dark street, I'm gonna like hold on to my keys. Yeah. You know? That's just what it is.
You mentioned earlier about harassment. And I just want to bring up, you know, we're saying like men have to be accountable for other men that are saying misogynistic, sexist, like aggressive, dangerous things. But harassment's an interesting one, because I feel like a lot of men don't fully appreciate what harassment can include. Yeah. Harassment doesn't just mean, you know, physical abuse or rape. Like, let's just say it as it is. Harassment can be as much as, you know, just catcalling, or just being creepy, or just being kind of, I don't know. Because I've had conversations with guys before, and they're like, "Oh God, you can't do anything now. You can't even like chat up a woman without them saying that you're, you know, being abusive," or I can't remember what the words are, but do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, where's that line of how does a guy gauge what is harassment and what isn't? Not just for the person who's struggling to know what's appropriate to do or not, but also for the guys around them. Yeah. When to call them out on it and go, dude, that's fucked up. Yeah. Like, you might think that's a bit of fun, but for her, she's not showing it, but she's probably quite nervous now. Yeah. You know, because she doesn't know who you are. Yeah, right. Right. I think I understand that sometimes it's a difficult one to gauge for men, because if you're trying to meet someone, if you're trying to talk to someone, and then you feel like you can't because you might come across as harassment, like, I understand the struggle there, and I understand the fear of that. But I think as a general rule, to always keep in mind that, you know, what we've seen so far in the world, in a lot of different, it's not just here, but in a lot of countries and all around the world, is that women risk so much by spending time with men alone. They risk so much. And again, not to say it doesn't happen the other way around, but it was way more likely to happen, violence from men to women in these situations. And so you have to keep that in mind, that women are just scared. Yeah. That's all it is. And so I think unless you are receiving very clear signals that this person is like, and I know people are like, yeah, but you think they are and they aren't and whatever, just give them the basic respect that you would give to any other person. You know, ask for consent for this is just such basic things, but this is something that men need to remind each other. You know, if you see, oh, is this person might be uncomfortable or whatever,
just say, you know, I'm not sure if this is okay, or ask them, is this okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes I know a lot of women will say, well, yeah, you ask me, but I'm scared that if I say no, something will happen. So I understand that it's a lot of gray area there, and it's very difficult to navigate, and I get it. But you just have to keep trying, and always keep in mind that you are probably in a position where you are, you know, more powerful than this person. And you might come across scary in some situations. And so overall, just try to be as respectful as you can. And like ask. I think for me personally, if somebody would say, like we had this conversation with Ben, do you remember about the train? About sitting next to somebody on the train.
Yeah.
Would you feel more comfortable if there was a man, like there was lots of seats, and the man would have to sit next to you on the train because that's where the seat is assigned? And what should he do in order not to appear creepy, like, oh, I'm just trying to sit next to this girl? And I think, even though we weren't sure about the answer, but like you can't really go wrong with saying something like, oh, like, is this okay? I hope I don't make you feel uncomfortable, or whatever, you know.
It's a difficult one.
And it is a difficult one because sometimes women...
Sometimes that alone can be more weird for
Yeah,
people.
for sure. And sometimes people will...
It's a thing by thing, isn't it? I mean, if you're coming from a place of respect and caution, then chances are, you know, if your intentions are coming from the right place, it's going to come across okay.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't, then, you know, it's a case by case thing.
This is another thing too. So that's a really good point, actually, is to check your intention, and to like check in with yourself. What is it you're trying to achieve? You know, are you trying to show off in front of your buddies, or are you genuinely trying to sort of speak to this girl, speak to this person? Are you genuinely interested in them?
Yeah.
You know, and what your intentions are. And like, not to say that on a night out your intention can't just be that you're trying to get laid, because it absolutely can be. But again,
right.
it's like
There's respectful ways of doing
it.
I know, and that, you know, I've heard guys complain about this, like, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that, and I have to be extra careful. It's like, but so what? Like, get over it. Like, if I'm walking down the street and I turn a corner and suddenly I'm right behind another woman, like, I'll either slow down or cross the street and make an effort not to be walking right behind them, because I know that they're probably feeling uncomfortable, especially if they get a glimpse of me.
Exactly.
But do you know what I mean? It's like, and I had 2 older sisters, and I remember when I was a kid, them telling me stories about having to like run away from creepy guys, or being called at from the bus stop and things like this, or like men approaching them when they were teenagers. And like, I like to think it's gotten better since then, but there's no excuse for men to not look into this. How can we be better?
So I find that a lot of the times, people who aren't a part of a group that's oppressed in some way find it really difficult to relate to, which I understand. You know, there's a lot of things I can't relate to in the world. Like I'm very aware of a lot of my privileges.
You've still got that white privilege, baby.
Yeah, and loads of things, and you know, being straight and being like, there's so many things that I am that, and so I will never understand how other people feel, but that doesn't stop me from trying my best to empathize and to sympathize and to understand what they go through. And often, which I think says a lot about the state of the world, is that people don't care to do anything until it happens to you directly. I think oftentimes people are like, oh, that's so sad for you. Anyway, moving on, because, you know, that's just how it is.
Go.
But and so I hear some men talk about like, oh yeah, but I've been harassed, you know, I've been harassed by people, you know, like whatever. And it's like the ones that have been harassed, sometimes even still then they don't fully understand, but I feel like those are the ones that come closest, who were harassed by other men for some reason. And then I think if you know somebody who has, because I feel like men listen to men more, and you can say like, oh yeah, but this has happened to me and it made me feel uncomfortable. Imagine that, but pretty much all the time, you know? And while and maybe some people have never been harassed, so they don't know. But if you've ever been harassed in any way, imagine that feeling, but feeling that loads of times, like sometimes daily. Some people, like I remember living in a place where it's a big city. If you live in a big city and as a woman, you experience it daily.
Yeah, right.
If you go to school, you probably experience it daily. It's like, you know, and people underestimate those little things, but there's loads of those.
Yeah, and then that spills over. That has an impact on your day-to-day life.
Yeah,
that
of course it
ends
does.
up becoming like every thought. Like anyone that's ever been harassed once will remember that time, especially if it's bad. But then imagine to have like small harassments every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I've been harassed 4 times in my life, and they were all men.
Right.
You know, like gay men, and it was fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was always men.
Yeah.
But you know, I've had this conversation with a couple of guys before, and they go, you know, here in the UK especially, there's a mental health epidemic with men,
Mm-hmm.
and that the suicide rate is highest with men,
Mm-hmm.
and that, you know, it's men that are struggling, and it's men that need attention
Mm-hmm.
drawn to them. What would you say to that?
I agree. I think there is a huge problem, and men are struggling, and I think it's men's fault. And it's not the individual man that's struggling is his fault, is what I'm saying. I think it's the system that's set up this way.
Yeah.
And men as a whole, generalizing, are at the top is the problem. And it's a problem for men as well. Patriarchy hurts men too. And this is something that feminists like to say, and people like to be like, but it's true. But I'm yet to hear a reason that's outside of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's outside of, you know, nobody cares about men, and they're not listened to, and all of those things. And sometimes obviously women are brought into it, like women want a man that doesn't cry, that's tough, that's this and that and the other. And that's, I mean, now more than ever, I feel like it's very clear that that's not the case, because there's more and more women who are saying how, like, this is what men think women want, and this is what women really want.
Yeah.
And there's more and more of that information out there.
I think it's important to mention as well that if you're having a conversation with someone about the patriarchy and the problems that women are facing because of men, for men to then say that there's a pandemic of mental health crisis as a counter argument, it's a different topic.
Two
It's
things
like
can be true at once.
that there is a crisis with men's mental health, and at the same time there is a problem with how men are treating women.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And it's obviously a different issue, but the sentiment and the idea is the same. Well, so I'm not comparing the struggles, but I'm comparing the sentiment that when people talk about Black Lives Matter or any sort of racial injustice, when they talk about that and people go, well, what about me? What about this? What about my life? What about white people? What about everyone?
Yeah.
It's like nobody's saying
that
that.
all lives matter as a
it's
response to Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. And it's the same
it's difficult.
idea.
I think it's really difficult for people to get that.
When we talk about these issues, it's not to say that women have zero part in this, right? Like, again, women take responsibility for their parts as well. You know, there are things that, like, for example, because you're aware of this, you try and help men, especially if you're in a relationship with a man, and then it's your responsibility to then provide the space, like to help them as well in a relationship, right? Not just in general, like you don't have to go around and help every single man, but if you're in a relationship with a man and if you are expecting them to be strong and not to cry and all of these, then you should check that as a woman, even though
within yourself,
even though that comes from internalized misogyny. Right? Like, women didn't wake up and thought of that one day themselves. This is something else that has been taught, in my opinion. But anyway, it's their responsibility to unpack their own internalized misogyny.
Any relationship where the man is, really tough and doesn't show his feelings and emotionless is neglecting his partner's emotions, because that's how it works.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So any woman who's happy to be in that kind of relationship is neglecting her own feelings.
Yeah.
And isn't actually looking at what she needs as opposed to what she thinks she wants.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about.
But anyway, I wanted to show you
Show me
this video because I thought that was very interesting. In this video, she talks about a study that had come out on men and the loneliness epidemic of men.
A couple days ago, Psychology Today released this article about the rise of lonely single men, which I think is a direct correlation to the rise of like Andrew Tate, alpha male, fresh and fit culture. The article says dating opportunities for heterosexual men are diminishing as healthy relationship standards increase. Younger and middle-aged men are the loneliest they've ever been. We can fucking tell. And it's probably going to get worse. Over the last 30 years, men have become a larger portion of that growing group of long-term single people, also known as incels. And while you don't actually need to be in a relationship to be happy, men typically are happier and healthier when partnered, because women are doing their domestic and emotional labor for them. So 62% of people on dating apps are men, which is why women are being pickier because they have more options. Skills deficits. For men, this means a relationship skills gap that, if not addressed, will likely lead to fewer dating opportunities, less patience for poor communication skills, and longer periods of being.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting as well. And this adds to the idea of like, yeah, men are struggling too. And, you know, nobody cares about men and all that stuff that people say. But it explains why, you know, if women are slowly catching on to the fact that how they're being treated they're not accepting the bare minimum anymore. They're expecting emotional intelligence as well as, you know, support and lots of other things, as well as women are, you know, obviously they're working and they're doing their own thing more and more now, as in the past. They're not dependent on men anymore.
And there's less patience for it. There's just less patience for it. And what she says is true. Like, there's more options. So why would you settle?
Yeah.
Why would you settle for the guy that isn't giving you your emotional needs?
Especially when the problem is that if men from a young age are taught that their only purpose is to be tough
and to provide.
And then now that's no longer the option because women don't always need to be provided for. Then what else is left?
I know.
That's when women are asking for more. It's like, okay.
I know, it's a shame really, because if if some men understood that by being emotionally mature and present for their partner, there would be like this new lease of, you know, they would be back in their masculine because their partner would kind of look up to them for that support and for that emotional support. Yeah. You know, like they would from the inside lean on to their partners. And the reality is it goes both ways, right? You lean on each other and it becomes a much healthier dynamic when you can do that. And you can let go of this ego bullshit that I need to be tough and I need to be there for support, because that snaps at some point. You know.
And I think one of the big misunderstandings that people somewhere along the line misunderstood for some reason is that when they say, well, because women are the ones, or people who have a uterus who are able to give birth, they are the ones who need to be protected because they're supposed to look after the child and they're supposed to be, you know, nurturing. And so the man is supposed to be protecting them and providing for them. And it's like they took that so literally and decided, okay, so that means I give you food, I give you money. There you go. That's it. That's all I need to give you. But that's not what it means, because you and I both know that when I had Bella and when women have a baby, what they need more than anything is emotional support. That's how you protect them. That's how you're there for them. And that's how you provide. That's what you provide. I didn't need you to provide money. I mean, obviously you were working because I didn't, because we live in a world where we need money. But that's not the main thing.
No, it's not.
And providing doesn't mean you provide money and food. Providing means emotions and support.
Yeah, and I tell you what, like obviously like the first couple of years when we had Bella, like I had to learn a lot of this stuff. Yeah. As you were, like we were both kind of navigating all of this as we went along. But in those moments where, you know, I've cracked it and I've emotionally supported you, and then the warmth that comes from you coming back, you know, it makes me feel more like the best partner I could ever be in those moments, because I did it right. Do you know what I mean? Like on a deeper level. Yeah. And I do get it. Like, it's difficult if you're at work all day and then you come back and then you need to provide an emotional support. But that's why having kids is difficult. Partly. You know, that's with the kids. It's the same without the kids. You need that emotional support.
Yeah, of course.
But I think it is really difficult for men, especially like men I don't know what age, but like I'm 39 and I found it really difficult. And it's probably because I was never, you know, my father was like really loving to my mum.
Yeah.
But it's not been ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And it's not been taught to me. And, you know, it's a very classic case of you say something that's bothering you and all I hear is a problem and how do I fix it?
Yeah.
When actually, whether it's harder or easier, I just need to fucking listen and care.
Yeah.
But that is difficult to remind yourself, because it's like my default is to like fix the problem next.
Yeah, and obviously I say the example of when you have a child, but it's not just about that. It could be about anything. The point is that the support and the providing doesn't have to be as black and white as men imagine it to be. It's not. That's not what they're expecting.
So what about men that are throwing their toys out their pram and going like, oh, but what do women do for men then? Why has it got to be just men give, and there's women complaining all the time? And what do they do for us?
I mean, what do they do, right? What do they do? It's the same as, like, everybody has a place in this world. Everybody is doing their part in the world and in society. So it's like, what do women do? Women do the same as men do. Everybody does the same. Everybody's just trying to get by.
Yeah.
The problem is that women are in constant like fear and worry of men is the problem. You know, it's like you to say, what do women provide? Well, if you don't have to be with women either. Like, they're fine. You don't have to have them. The same reason why women are realizing now that they don't have to have men either, which is part of the problem for men, because they're like, oh, but then, you know, nobody wants me. And it's like, yeah, of course. You know, I'm not saying that a woman, just because they're a woman, they are entitled to everything better, which I think is what a lot of people hear when people say these things. What you're hearing is that by that definition, then any woman, they can be as awful as they want to be, but they're still, you know, deserve this, this, and this, and that. That's not the case.
Yeah.
The case is that all they're asking for is not to have to be scared, not to have to be threatened, not to have to be like belittled and be treated in a way in everyday life and just, you know, in general, that feels like they are less than.
Yeah.
You know, they should be able to have the same respect as men do. And this is why when men think that women who are feminists or women or people who are trying to be there for women in this way means that they are pushing men down. And that's not the case. All we're trying to do
bring them up.
is for everybody to be brought up together.
Yeah.
That's all that they're. And so when they say, oh, but there were some women who did make it into power and they were horrible, and it's like, yeah, of course, because if you built this fucking patriarchal structure and that's what you're trying to fit women into, what the fuck are they supposed to do by themselves? So when they say, oh, but this prime minister or this whoever, she's in high position and she's acting just like a man, because this world is made like that and nobody's going to support her to change the entire system all by herself.
Yeah, I mean,
why is the responsibility all of a sudden on that one woman? Nobody questioned it before. The system was fine. But when a woman does it, oh, but she's horrible too. Yeah, too. She's horrible too.
Yeah.
In a system that was made by horrible, like,
you see women in power and they all possess very like masculine traits, and the way that they act and the way that they're strong and like completely devoid of any emotion generally. And it's because they're playing into like a male dominated fucking game.
Yeah.
That they have to play, otherwise they wouldn't be in that place
exactly
of power.
Back to the Matt Rife thing, because
Full circle.
Well, because this video that I found after obviously seeing his content and like having my own thoughts, but then I found this one creator who put it so well and eloquently.
So wait, before you play, give me a little intro. What is this?
The intro is basically explaining why is it, you had this question earlier, why is it that somebody like Matt Rife went from being, you know, somebody who's supported by women largely and is like sort of riding that one for the girls, to doing a complete 180, and why do men do that and why did he do that? And this is a good explanation.
I don't think the question of what we can and can't joke about is as interesting right now as the question of what men will show themselves to be once they are given even a little bit of power. What just happened with Matt Rife is an amazing example of how the patriarchy works in its default mode, and also a really strong reminder to women that even when men seem like they might be for the girlies, there's a good chance that they won't be. And the reason that they won't be is because patriarchy teaches men by default to align with other men, to prioritize other men, to seek the approval of other men, and to hugely fear the disapproval of other men. Men's default position is misogyny. Unless they spend time actually thinking and unpacking gender equality and try to see women as people rather than objects, their default position will be to do what Matt Rife did. So with Matt Rife making a domestic violence joke, all he has shown us is that he thinks it is more important to appeal to the kinds of men who would find a domestic violence joke at the expense of women funny than it is to be faithful and respectful of his majority female audience and soon to be almost zero female audience.
How aware do you think he was of what he was doing before he did it? Mm-hmm. Like, do you think he went into it knowing that he was... You know, he says that he's doing one for the guys. Mm-hmm. Does he know the extent of how shitty it was, what he was doing? And he just took that chance? Or was it the pressure of other men? Like, do you think he was told to do it? Or do you think he just... How does this play out? Like, how does this happen?
I think that he was gaining popularity within... Like, because of TikTok, right? He started posting on TikTok and he was becoming more and more popular. And just like the same way as you could have a boy band that could gain popularity by exclusively being supported mostly by women and gay men or, you know, anybody in between, then it becomes silly. It becomes ridiculous, right? Boy bands, ew, cheesy, gross. Nobody likes boy bands. It's for the girls. That's what happens.
Right.
And often why, you know, after boy bands, some of the members become like the complete opposite of what they were before. So I think that's what was going on with him. I think that he was seeing that's where he was headed, and he was becoming more popular, and maybe it was more men paying attention to him, and maybe somebody down the line was like, ooh, you know, like making fun of him for it. I would imagine. I don't know, but the fact that he at some point recognized that there are more eyes on him from men, and he thought, I gotta show the boys that I'm still a boy.
It's so strange that he did it so blatantly, though. Like, he didn't just like throw in a few jokes for the boys. Like, he flipped his whole kind of persona towards women.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a strange one.
We could argue though, because there are a lot of these kind of men who are almost worse. In fact, not almost, they are worse than men who are just like a gym bro or like a very like stereotypical misogynistic man. There are some men who pretend to be for the girls, you know, they know all the things that women want to hear, but they're still misogynistic and they're still going to treat them like shit, but they're going to pretend like they're one of the good guys, as they say, you know. And so who's to say that he wasn't like that to begin with? Who's to say that from the beginning he didn't have that in mind, like, you know, if I'm for the girls, I'm going to get so many, I'm going to get with all these women, I'm going to be like one of their favorite, and then I can fuck all of them, or whatever his mindset was. Maybe it could have been that. So maybe he was like this from the beginning, and this is when he showed his true colors. If not that, then the problem is that he valued men, like she says in the video. You know, it shows that it's like, give him a little bit of power, a little bit of more eyes on him, more like, oh, the world is watching you now you're making it big. Yeah. Whose side are you gonna, even though there shouldn't be a side, but like, are you gonna stay for the girls and really go with it and go all the way? Because you know what that means. Then
it means the scrutiny of a lot of men.
Exactly. Or you're gonna have to show like, no, I know I like girls and everything, but I'm for the boys.
Do you think, because I think he's quite young, right? Like, he looks young.
Yeah.
Not that that's an excuse these days, but do you think he can turn it around? Do you think, like, if he had a little bit of awareness now and he thought, oh fuck, do you think if he genuinely feels some sort of regret, do you think he can turn it around?
Yeah, anybody can turn it around with the right intentions. It's just, it depends on the intention. Like, would he be turning it around because to gain popularity, or would he be turning it around because what he says is fucked up?
I'm guessing a lot of people will just
because all of a sudden I'm seeing this, which is the most ridiculous thing. All of a sudden I've seen I'm being shown clips from Andrew Tate on my social media.
Really?
And he is the opposite. Not the opposite completely.
Oh, well, saying nice things.
But he's saying he's
women.
being very respectful, very different. And it's not a coincidence, right? Like,
no, it's not.
It's not a coincidence that he went down so hard. And like, obviously he has his hardcore stance and whatever, but like, he's so hated. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing content, which my content is very clear. Like my For You pages and all of these are very clear on what I'm interested in. So the fact that I'm shown that is very telling.
You know what's really interesting with Andrew Tate? Like the whole phenomenon of Andrew Tate is that if you were to sit down and look at all of his content, there would be without doubt that this guy's a problem. Right? That not only is he misogynistic, but he's more than likely a sociopath, and you know, he's working a pyramid scheme with guys, preying on vulnerable guys that are missing a network or like a support system, and he's preying on that.
And preying on women.
Oh no, I'm preying on women, objectifying women, using women, and exploiting women, like not just for sex but for money, right? But if you speak to people about like the content that they've watched of Andrew Tate, the guys especially, me included, will go, oh yeah, no, he's really fucked up. But some of the things he says I really agree with. And it's interesting because he's smart, right? He says a lot of things that he knows is going to get people's, like he's kind of anti-government, like the government this, the government that, which everyone's feeling at the moment, right? Like it doesn't take a genius to say things that people are going to agree with.
Yeah.
But because he's got the power behind it, a lot of blokes are like, oh yeah, but he's saying it for the right reasons. So you end up having like this like dangerous man, which men can watch and go, yeah, but I agree with him on other things.
Exactly.
And that's like a fucking slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because that's how you kind of slip into like being on like, oh, you know, he's not all that bad. Or like, oh, maybe I will have a look at his stupid fucking course. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, like he's, I mean, I think it's fair to say like he's super intelligent and he's a con artist. Like he's so it's interesting for me, like that.
In general, I think one really good advice for men is that for anyone, but in this particular case, men who are sort of trying to figure all of this out and are kind of like, oh, but who do I listen to? Who do I follow? What do I do? I think that you should, whoever you're following, look at their life, what they have in real life, not social media life, but like look at a person. Whose advice are you taking? What are they living the life that you dream of, that you want? When you listen to these people, do you really want to take their advice?
I think it's a shame that we're in a place of society where we're looking to other people on social media for like a support network or role models. Do you know what I mean? Because the role models should be like the people around you, and on like a very like down to earth level.
Yeah.
You know, if it's not like someone in the family, it should be like someone that you know. Or I don't know. I feel like these unattainable high influencer types, it's unrealistic for that to be a role model when they're playing a fucking character anyway.
Exactly.
And you don't know if they're actually happy.
Yeah.
You don't know what their real true morals are.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure if Andrew Tate wrote a list of like what he values and what's important, like those shouldn't be your values and what you find important.
Yeah.
Probably because it's like money, babes, and Bugattis or something.
Yeah, and who are you trying to impress, and why?
Like, who are you doing it for?
And if you're doing it to impress other men, because it's another thing that's proven, right? Like, obviously, there are women who enjoy money and who want to be with somebody who has money, and that's fine. But by now we know that that's not necessarily the most important thing. Men often don't try to impress other women. When they think they are trying to impress other women, they are really trying to impress other men. And that's often the issue within itself. You know, it's like, who are you doing this for? Because women, most often, they don't care.
Yeah.
And the ones that do care will care about those guys. That's another thing too. It's like if you're worried about a woman who cares about money, oh, she's this and that. And it's like, well, if you don't have any money, you have nothing to worry about. Like, those men will worry about it. And most of the time they want those women anyway, you know?
Talking about them gold diggers.
Yeah, which is ridiculous because which like you have to pick a side with that as well. It's like, well, are they gold diggers? But if they're gold diggers, then aren't they what you tell them to be? They just want to be a wife. Yeah. That's all I want to be. So that's not allowed then? I thought that's women were what they're supposed to be. Just be a wife. Just stay at home and stay in the kitchen. And it's like, well, that's probably all she wants to do then. If I'm a gold digger, if I just want to be supported, then it's like, okay. But isn't that what you want? But I'm still have to go to work, but still have to wash the like, which one is it? You gotta pick a side. You can't have both.
Can't have both.
Well, you can, but.
All right. Are there any other points that we want to put across?
One last thing that I have so much to say about these things. It's a never-ending thing. Yeah. The only thing I wanted to say was just to possible arguments, because I have heard that one before as well, is that if men are the problem, then, you know, what about women who raise these men, right? Women who give birth to these men, and they are the mothers and they raise these men. And so why is it not their fault? And because I've heard that kind of argument before, but it's like what a lot of people don't account for in those cases is that it's often not just the woman.
No.
Because we don't live in a society where mothers get to fully be involved a lot of the times and raise their children the way that they would want to a lot of the times. But also women are trying to make it work within this society. So again, you could be as nurturing and as loving to your son as you can and give them all the love and everything that you can. But if then they have a male figure in their life who's telling them to toughen up, stop showing emotion, and women, again, with internalized misogyny, telling their own sons, actually, you're a boy, you're not supposed to cry.
I hear that a lot.
Who taught them that?
Yeah.
Because I know as a mother myself, and again, I don't have to be a mother to be able to notice, but I definitely have experience, is that I know what it feels like to be a mother. And so if I am constantly questioning what I'm teaching my child. And so if women are teaching misogynistic things to their children, they didn't come up with that.
No.
You know, that they didn't decide that.
No, it's conditioning. Or trauma.
And then also like men they can't win anyway. Nobody can win in that situation, because men who are attached to their mothers, then they're a mama's boy, then they're a bitch, then they're a whatever. So it's again, you can't win. That's all.
Let us know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, if there's any points that you strongly disagree with, because we do want to hear them and we'll raise them in future episodes. Don't be shy. We're non-judgmental.
And we love everyone. We love men. Men are great. Men are super important for the world.
They are.
They are very important.
Well, we're not going to do it now, but I do hear this argument that, you know, men are really important to the world, and like pro men things. It's like, yeah. All of that is true. Absolutely. Men are vital to the well-being of the planet. It's just at the same time, they're doing a lot of injustices. They're doing a lot of damage, and you know, it's up to men and women to make the change. But when it comes to making a change with other men, it has to come from other men, because women can scream and shout as much as they want, but they'll just be called emotional anyway. So like, and that's another thing. I think once we get through this barrier that, you know, men are a big problem, then men are going to be able to like kind of lean into their feminine, in inverted commas. They're going to be able to lean into their emotional side and like recover from this bullshit. You know, it feels a lot nicer for me now, being a lot more in tune with my emotions and being like, you know, just in tune with it, than suppressing every fucking happy sad feeling because I don't want to seem a certain way.
Exactly.
But that, you know, it's been a
and
process.
Anger is an emotion. So you're emotional if you're angry, but also that's not the only available emotion. That shouldn't be the only available emotion, and then rebrand it and not even call it emotion.
Exactly.
Like, that's so unfair to men, because then everything they do, all they get to do is be angry.
Well, this proves how like men are victims to this patriarchy bullshit as well. Like the fact that boys are growing up being like, don't cry, toughen up, be a man, blah blah blah, and then turning into men that are completely detached from how to be sad and emotional. And so when they're sad, they get angry, because that's the only kind of emotion that's allowed. And so then you end up with angry men. Now these angry men they're just sad, suppressed men. But they only know how to be angry. And the sooner they can get back in touch with the sad,
Yeah,
then you've got a healthier fucking toolkit of emotions to play with.
And I'm not surprised that when they're met with women who are expecting emotional intelligence from you, and you're like, well, what the fuck do you want from me? I'm not surprised that that's met with more resistance and more like, well, it's your fault. Yeah. It's your fault. Like, what do you want from me? Like, do you want me to be emotionally intelligent, or you want me to be the man?
Yeah,
So I don't understand. I understand where it comes from. It's just you have to think about the root cause of it. I want to add just one last thing.
Please.
Is that, you know, for men who are struggling and who are like on some sort of a path, you know, I hear more and more from you and from other people that there are these men groups that are forming that are in a positive way. Yeah. And I think that's really, really good. And that's I think that any men who see that kind of thing in their area or wherever, seek it out, look for it. Obviously, there are toxic ones, but try and find the ones where they really are genuinely men that are there for each other, because it's so important. It's so important to support 100%. Each other and to listen to one another as men, and to allow the space there to be vulnerable and emotional and all these things. I think it's great. I think it's so good.
Big up Zane from episode 4 on Hayward and Stuff. I spoke to Zane just last week, and he has a men's group in Newcastle, I think it is. If you go to Hayward and Stuff, you can see all the details. Actually, I'll put it in the link below as well. Yeah. He has a men's group. And it's amazing what they do. You know, they don't accept misogynistic, negative talk about their exes or their partners. Yeah. They kind of like gently steer it away. Yeah. Like with love and compassion. Yeah. And it's nice that men are having those conversations now and using those words. These men groups are great. Like the ones that are doing it from the right intention, right? It's always the intention behind it.
Exactly. And it is important. It is time for men to support each other as well, because that's one thing that women always had. It's like, as much as like we may have it rough in some aspects, but women at least have each other a lot of the times. You know, we always have.
Women are much better at talking to each other about how they're feeling.
Yeah.
You know, they're allowed to, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that's huge for us. Like we are labeled as emotional, but at least we're allowed, you know, at least we're allowed to feel our emotions.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because it's only up until recently that, you know, women are like the emotional ones, but it's like men are just as emotional.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's just like, and then people go like, oh yeah, men and women just present it differently. It's like, yeah, but we've almost been forced to.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't even know now how I think naturally men would present their emotions. Like I don't know the original state of how men would present their emotions compared to women.
Well, we can see it in childhood, right? We're around children. Right, like you can see it in children that boys.
It's exactly
obviously there are some differences in whatever ways, but when it comes to emotions, it's the same thing. Yeah, they feel the same emotions and they act the same way. It's just is what it is.
Yeah. And for any like people thinking like, oh, but hormones take such a massive impact into how people feel and stuff, that there is some truth in that. But you can't tell me that a man that has, you know, got testicles and a lot of testosterone doesn't know how to cry naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
When they're sad.
It's
like that's supposed to be how it works. Yeah. There's a reason why people cry when they're sad. Like it releases endorphins, it makes you feel better. Yeah. So if you turn that off, you got problems. Yeah. Big problems. Yeah, you do have to open it all up.
Yeah.
One by one.
One by one.
See you at the next one.
Real pressure in the media tonight. Yeah, but the music got me feeling just fine. Yeah, real pressure in the media tonight.